the deep cold of January 1863, in a Braxton County hollow they don't put on maps anymore, old Absalom Kettle stood over his well in his shirt sleeves in the snow, whispering down into the black water like a man says grace. And the water was whispering back. Come up the Kettle place at dusk, and you'd have seen it first as wood smoke against a dark ridge, a low log cabin, a hog pen out past the barn, gone strange and quiet. And beyond that, ringed in fieldstone, a well with a faint mist hung over its mouth. That night, if you'd stood close, you'd have heard the thing nobody wants to hear. The well was breathing, not water moving, breathing, slow and wet, in and out, like a big animal asleep under the ground. That's the first wrong thing. Hold on to that. The breathing. You'll want it later. Now, the people. The Kettles had kept to themselves up that hollow 3 generations. Trappers and hog farmers, God-fearing to the county's face, front pew at the church down in Sutton, hats in hand, amen loud enough for the whole congregation to hear. Good folk, they'd have told you, but you'd have smelled the hog pen before you saw the cabin, and you'd have felt the whole hollow go quiet the closer you came to that well. And there was a tell about them. Every last Kettle, man, woman, and child, carried the same pale eyes, a washed-out gray that caught lantern light wrong and held it. Look one of them full in the face and you'd feel it. And here's the other thing the neighbors noticed. Not one of them would draw water in front of a stranger. Not ever. Because the Kettles had luck. Money nobody could account for. Traps always full when the next man's hung empty. Crops that never once failed, drought or flood. Fat hogs in a lean year. The kind of fortune that makes a whole county start to wonder. And the church folk down at Sutton, they wondered plenty. They just knew better than to say it out loud. Because luck like that always has a price, and the price of the Kettle's luck was a thing you did not name. The story goes, it all started with Absalom's grandfather. He dug that well too deep one dry year, and he struck something colder than water. And from that day on, the family fed it. Something colder than water. That's what Absalom's grandfather struck the year he dug that well too deep, chasing wet in a dry season. And once you've struck a thing like that, you don't fill the hole back in. You feed it. It started small. A chicken first, then a lamb. They'd bind it at the stone rim, work a rope under it, and lower it down into the dark by lantern light. You'd hear the creak of the rope, then nothing. No splash. Just a low sound down in the shaft, patient as chewing. And the thing learned them. That's the part the old-timers linger on. It learned the family's step on the porch boards. It learned which foot fell first, Absalom's heavy left, the way a Kettle's boot came down on that worn plank, and it would rise in the cold water to meet the sound, whispering back like the well was breathing. Listen for it. Which foot falls first when you climb your own porch tonight? The thing in that well knew the Kettles by that. So now you know why no Kettle would ever draw water in front of a stranger. It wasn't shyness. It wasn't pride. It was that the moment a bucket dropped, the thing below came up to the sound. And a stranger might see the water move on its own. Then came the winter a trapper named Elias Coombs walked down off the ridge. Furs stiff with frost, a man who'd wintered alone for 20 years and didn't spook easy. He told them he'd heard a voice in that hollow, a voice that spoke his dead wife's name. And it hadn't come from the trees. It came up out of the ground. The Kettles ran him off, told him to keep his ghosts on his own land. But they say don't answer if the water calls a name you loved, Coombs answered. He was gone by spring. His cabin door stood open, snow blown clean across the threshold, the hearth cold as the day it was built. And his 2 dogs, good ridge dogs, loyal to the bone, were found frozen at the well's edge, their throats worked open from the inside. Because the scraps had stopped being enough. A chicken wouldn't do it anymore. A lamb wouldn't do it. The thing down there wanted its own now. It wanted blood, the pale-eyed kin it had made. 3 nights that little girl's voice came up out of the black water, worn old and wrong, calling her own kin down. And on the third night standing there in the snow, the Kettles finally understood what they'd been feeding all those years. It was never a demon they'd caught. That's the thing you have to sit with. Old Absalom's grandfather dug too deep and struck something colder than water, and they thought they'd trapped it. They hadn't. It was kin. It was the true root of the bloodline, down there in the dark, and it had been theirs all along. Every one of them born with those same pale eyes wore its mark. So now you know why the traps were always full, why the crops never failed, why they had money nobody could account for. Every fat harvest, every full trap was interest paid on a debt. Slow, quiet interest, year after year. And the girl of 9 was the principal, come due at last. The price the church folk down at Sutton wouldn't name. Here it is. It was blood, and it was their own. So they made their choice. They hauled iron chain and a burlap sack of rock salt up that snowy hollow, and they went to shut it. They poured the salt out across the black water, white spreading over the cold like frost on a pane. They laid the iron chain across the mouth. They rolled a heavy millstone over the whole of it, capped it tight, and they swore on the family Bible that no living soul would ever draw from that well again. But the sealing didn't kill it. Understand that. The salt and the iron and the stone, none of it killed the thing. It only shut the door, and it shut it with the family still standing on the wrong side. Within the year, the Kettles were gone, some of them buried up on the ridge, some of them just gone, beds cold, no word, no grave. The cabin went to rot, brush pulling it down into the ground. They say if you find that hollow now, you'll come on a well-ringed and rusted chain and old salt gone gray. And the millstone will be warm, warm, in the dead of a mountain winter. The old-timers tell it plain. Don't lift the iron. Don't answer if the water knows your name. And whatever you do, don't let it hear your step on the porch. So if you ever find that hollow, and you ever hear your own step come back at you off the porch boards, you already know what's listening.